It is no longer cute to not have your shit together. On the menu today at Sarah's Soju Cafe is pink lemonade, so grab your mugs and let's chat about approaching our 30s. Welcome back, Soju Shotties, to another episode of Soju with Sarah. Today is our 40th episode. I'm screaming internally, and you guys didn't mishear me. I said 40. 40 is insane. I feel like we just started the podcast yesterday, and to know that we've made 40 consistent episodes every single week without a break is mind-blowing to me. But regardless, if this is your first episode or if it's your 40th episode tuning in, thank you guys for being here. My name is Sarah, currently solo host today. Usually we have James on, but yeah, welcome to the podcast where we talk about anything in adulthood, career, love, relationships, friendships, and beyond. I don't know the official tagline. I feel like sometimes I say other things in there, but I'm blanking today. Did I say finance? We talk about finance sometimes, but welcome to the podcast. Time really does fly. And today's episode is also about time flying. It's about getting older, and we talk about getting older in different forms. But one thing that I really haven't dived that much into in the last year is approaching the number 30. Granted, I do have a couple of years before 30, and this might be a little bit preemptive of a podcast episode to do, but I did get this podcast episode from our feedback form, and we have it in our episodes in the description always if you guys want to submit feedback, episode ideas, and other things like that. So today I wanted to talk about approaching 30. I feel like my brain spirals when I think about approaching 30 because to some people 30 is a big deal. Like it's the big 30. Things change in your life. A lot of the times people enter a new stage or a new chapter of their life. And I feel like my life is trending in that direction. For context, I'm currently 27, but this year I'm going to be turning 28. Our producer actually turned 2 over the weekend. So that was very exciting. I don't think he even knew that he was turning 2, but we did a little happy birthday celebration for him, which was really cute, where I held him and we sang happy birthday twice. The first time just because we wanted to, and then the second time we were like, oh, this is really cute. Let's record this. So then we sang it again and he was filmed. But besides that, I feel like age creeps up on us, and one moment you might be 18 living your life. The next moment you're 30 and trying to figure out how to pay your mortgage. And I feel like all of us enter some transitionary era in our life where we realize that our mindset has also shifted. And I feel like I've been entering that. I have been slowly going through phases of changing my mindset, whether it's about career, my romantic relationship and what I want out of that, my value system. So that's the premise of today's episode. Before we get into it, I have a few, but before we get into it, if you guys are viewers of the podcast, you know we have to do our drink of the day. We're being a little bit healthy, so today we're doing a pink lemonade from this brand called Be Amazing. They actually sent me this to try, and it's a prebiotic and antioxidant drink. It's a blend of 10 fruits and veggies for total well-being. So cheers. I also am curious if you guys drink anything when you listen to the podcast. So if you're drinking anything, let me know in the comments below. Also, last housekeeping thing before we get started with the episode is if you guys enjoy the podcast, please give us a like or a subscribe or even a share. And if you really do love the podcast and want to be notified every week of when we post, feel free to turn on post notifications. And I think this only applies if you're listening on YouTube. However, I wanted to just mention that because I was talking to someone who said that they stopped listening to the podcast because YouTube stopped recommending me, which is a little bit sad, especially as a creator when you put out something and you want people to find it. To know that these episodes are going into the void is a little bit sad. So if you guys do enjoy this on a weekly basis, feel free to turn on post notifications so that you get reminded whenever we post. And that is the very last housekeeping thing, and we can get started with the episode all about approaching our 30s. So I did mention that I am 2 years away from 30, 2.5. Less than 2.5 years away from 30 this year. And I haven't had a formal birthday in a while. My last big birthday, I'm not a huge birthday celebrator, but when I first moved to New York, I really wanted to host a birthday, and I had my 25th birthday because I felt like that was a very important, crucial year, like my existential crisis. I think the theme was quarter life crisis and mourning our early 20s. And so I had everyone dressed in black, and it was a very fun birthday, but that was the last big birthday that I had. Every single year after that, I've either lost steam, had something small with friends, or just completely forgotten it. Like last year, I didn't plan anything, and I had a picnic scheduled with some friends. They didn't know it was my birthday until my boyfriend told them. And it's not that I am embarrassed to age. If anything, I welcome the aging process. But nowadays, I don't feel like I have the time to take in the fact that I am aging. And I really understand it when adults used to tell me that they're too busy to do things. Even just a couple of years ago, I was way less busy than I am now. There's so many random responsibilities that you have to take care of, like your taxes, which you guys should do if you're filing taxes this year, but just other things beyond rent that I have to think about. And it's a lot more to juggle than my early 20s. I think one of the things as I get older is also that I have more intention behind planning my future and planning for my future. So when I make a decision, I think about the longer term impact of it. A good example of this is last year I froze my eggs. And that is like, I think for a lot of women in their late 20s or even early 20s, the concept of freezing your eggs just to prepare for the future or any delays, in family planning comes into question. For me, I started having this discussion with my girlfriends around age 25, 26. I didn't seriously consider freezing my eggs until last year. So that was age 26 for me. And I did it right after I turned 27. And that's one of those things that you don't have to really think about in your early 20s, but in your late 20s and in your 30s, you start thinking about because you start making longer term plans for yourself. And I think I'm in that era right now, just trying to figure out my longer term plans and my longer term goals. A lot of it comes with struggle. Like a lot of it comes with confusion around what I want to do, what I can do in this lifetime. But something I keep reminding myself is that we're still young. Something that has changed over the course of the last few years, and now that I'm approaching my 30s, is my relationship to myself and with myself. You know that analogy where they talk about peeling back an onion and you are an onion and you slowly reveal yourself to people and your layers get peeled. I forget where that analogy comes from. For some reason, I'm thinking The Office, but it's probably not The Office. But as much as this onion analogy applies for your relationship with other people and like unraveling yourself to other people, I think the analogy also applies with yourself, because every year I feel like I'm peeling back a layer of myself. Like I'm understanding myself more. I'm growing into the person that I was meant to be. And I also just feel like I'm digging deeper behind like my intentions, my value systems, and the things that I care about. It's really easy to be heavily impacted and influenced by the people around you, especially when you're still forming things like your value system. And as you have more alone time, you also discover more of your inner dialogue and monologue. I recently had a conversation with a coworker around value systems, and especially around the idea that as you get older, your value system become more and more important, and they start shaping your personal life decisions more and more because it just matters more. There's a lot of external things and external factors that I've slowly started shedding as I get older. One of it is how much I care what other people think. And I've heard that a lot just from my friends who are in their 30s, that in your 30s, you start to stop caring what other people think. I get really excited by the thought of that because if I'm being really, really honest, I used to be very insecure, and I still am insecure about certain things. A lot of it I've learned to navigate and actually solve rather than ignore. But I used to be a really insecure person, and that comes with a whole pool of things like people pleasing and always chasing trends and always being uber mindful of how I look and come off to other people. And for that reason, I felt like I wasn't very honest with myself in my early 20s. Now that I'm in my late 20s, I think I still care about what people think. I'm not fully past that point where I just can completely ignore things that people say about me, and especially being in front of the camera, what people say about me online. But I'm looking forward to the day that I'm 50 and I absolutely do not care what someone's boyfriend's friend thinks about me, And I think with that, my wants also change a little bit, like the things that I want in life. In that same conversation that I had with a coworker, we were talking about how it's really easy to want the clear things in life, like the finances, the stability, the stable relationship, just a lot of the things on paper that seem standard to ask for in life. And once you get those things, or once you start walking in that direction, you start realizing that there's other things that you've ignored. Because I'm in the stages of peeling back this onion, this hypothetical onion that is me, I feel like every layer gets more and more clear in terms of what I'm asking for in this lifetime, if that makes sense. Sometimes I go into these like random mental quests in my head and I don't even know if it's very articulate. And today's episode, I'm trying to be a little more free with what I'm saying and how I'm saying it. And so I didn't really outline this out too much. So if this is confusing, please let me know. But I hope this is still relatable to anyone who is in maybe like a similar place in life, or even if you're younger, older. I hope this is somewhat relatable. In the last several years, I've actually heard a lot of my friends tell me that I'm way more secure and confident than I used to be, which is something that surprises me because I thought I used to be very confident too. But I guess it presented in a different way. And nowadays I am more secure because I don't mind as much what other people are thinking about me. And also I think I'm a little bit past that point of wanting validation from other people, just because in my head, if I'm getting validation from other people, it doesn't really take away my personal anxieties or things that I am worried about. On the topic of insecurities though, there is a whole dynamic around getting older and approaching 30 and your relationship with your appearance and all the superficial things. As much as I would love to say, as I'm getting older, I'm loving myself more, I'm shedding those insecurities around how I look, there's a whole level and layer to aging, like the physical act of aging, that is very daunting. Sometimes I look in the mirror and I don't recognize myself. And you know that thing where you look at a photo of yourself from like 5 years ago and you're like, wow, I look so good and I look so young back then, and why do I look like this right now? That unfortunately never ends. And I feel like this is something we can all relate to, but aging is just a cycle of that experience. And so once you realize that, I think you start to enter this period of, I need to be happy with where I'm at right now, but also I need to start taking care of myself better. Taking care of myself is something I've learned in my mid to late 20s. I'm still not very good at it. I'm still trying to figure out my ideal skincare routine, my healthy lifestyle, how to eat healthy, how to make healthy meals, and how to exercise and sleep and hit off all the things on the checklist of wellness. But because there's so many things in that like wellness space that you start becoming more and more mindful of, it's also easy to feel like things have slowed down. And for me, when I was 23, it was really easy for me to go to work, finish workout, grab a meal with a friend, come back home, start editing a video for my YouTube channel, and then stay up until like 2 a.m. doing that, and then rinse and repeat the whole cycle over and over again. And right now, I can honestly say that I cannot do that anymore. I think the whole hustle, grind, compromise your wellness just for other things like social life and work and all that, the sheen of that starts wearing off after a certain point. And for me, I'd much rather spend some more time at home making a healthy meal for myself than sacrificing my eating habits just to go out and drink with my friends for a weekend. And the sad thing, I don't remember if I talked about this in my second episode on the podcast, which was about aging and getting older and uglier, but I am very mindful of the fact that I am starting to look older too, and I don't look the same as I used to. I do tend to share a lot on this podcast, so I'm just like unleashing a lot of my thoughts right now. But last year, after I froze my eggs, for some reason, my body was not taking it very well. I think my hormones were all over the place. I was trying to work out. I was trying to get my life back together, but I think I took a very big hit in terms of aging. And I looked this up online, and it seems like some people also went through that, which is like the hormonal imbalance really messes up your skin and really messes up your body. Random things like bloating and acne and sagging skin. I feel like I experienced all of that. And I don't think I've bounced back fully from that. And I get a little bit insecure about how I look because I feel older and I feel like I look older. And I think it's kind of hard to navigate when you just passed your early 20s, when you are supposedly invincible, and now you're suddenly getting hit in all directions with obligations, with responsibilities, with existential crises. But on top of that, the visual of seeing yourself age, I think that is kind of scary. I know in my second episode on this podcast, I said I'm embracing all points of aging, but I can't deny that it is really terrifying. I think part of why I haven't really bounced back from that period of egg freezing is because I tend to take on a lot and I tend to overwhelm myself with a lot of new things. This is something I'm trying to work on. And that's also why I think my value system is shifting more towards like peace and calmness in life rather than hustle and chaos and overstimulation. But I feel like because I haven't treated my body that well these past few months, it has also been reflected in my body, and I just haven't been able to fully recover. But physically, I just feel uglier. And I hate to say that, but it's just a natural part of getting older. And I also think that's just something that I'm learning to navigate. But that is something about approaching your 30s that happens, which is I feel like your body just doesn't bounce back from things anymore. You can't go out and like drink with your friends for 3 nights in a row and expect to wake up the following Monday and go to work and be bright and vibrant and mentally okay and physically okay. There's so much more that you have to be cognizant about and just be mindful of when it comes to your wellness and your well-being. If there's anything I would have told myself earlier on rather than having to figure out now is just to really take care of yourself. But let me take a step back because I do want to say aging is beautiful. I'm not saying that if you have a wrinkle on your face that's the end of the world and that's a terrible thing. In the last 6 months, I've really not felt the best about myself because of egg freezing, the hormonal changes that came with that, and also just the sense of like accelerated aging that I see in myself. But the thing I'm learning from that is that you should listen to your body and you should take the signs. And for me, I've been dealing with a lot of acne ever since I froze my eggs. And I've also been eating poorly, and that's probably contributing to it. But in this era of my life where I'm approaching 30, I want to listen to my body rather than shut it off, because during college and also in my early 20s, I would allow myself to do very unhealthy things, whether it's drinking for 2 nights in a row, 3 nights in a row, or not getting enough sleep, or not exercising, or not eating healthy. And granted, I still have those habits. So I'm not perfect, and I still have a hard time sleeping at the right time, getting enough sleep, taking care of my skin, eating the right things, and exercising. When I actually list out the things that you have to do to take care of yourself and be someone who's mindful of wellness and your well-being, it's just so much. And I really admire the people that have always been consistent and stuck by things like wellness and good habits, because that stuff is harder to reverse than it is just to do, you know? And so if there's any tip that I wanted to give my 20-year-old self is to listen to your body and also take care of it. The good thing is, though, I feel like for a lot of us, we're still able to take care of ourselves. It's not like it's the end of the road for us and we can't treat our bodies better, but things like putting on sunscreen and sleeping early, those are all habits that we can start building now. I think my relationship with my body is different. I don't bounce back from things like drinking and not exercising and eating fast food all the time. And I know online I present, a healthy, well-adjusted life, but I snack so much. I drink sugary carbonated drinks, and being healthy is just something that creeps up on you. Like, it's a lifestyle desire that creeps up on you as you approach 30, and I am experiencing that. The next thing I wanted to talk about is career, because every year of my life, I think my relationship with my career has been different. My early goals when I first started my career were money and success. Money, obviously, because that is the root of stability for a lot of people, and that's what gives you livelihood in this world. But success in the sense of having a feeling like I reached certain milestones in my life. And there's something funny about success, which is it's a moving goalpost. So once you achieve some amount of success in your life, you're looking towards the next milestone, the next chapter, the next thing. And that's what puts us I think that's what puts a lot of us into this rat race of like always hustling, always grinding, and always feeling like you need to work so hard to move up. At this current moment in my life, my mindset is that you don't have to always be moving so fast, like moving the fastest that you can towards your goal. It's okay to take a pause. It's okay to take a breather. It's okay to just let yourself recover from all the hard work that you've done the last couple of years, trying to achieve whatever goal and whatever thing that you've been working towards. A lot of us don't give ourselves credit for everything we've done in this life. And I think we should. We should celebrate all of the things we've done. And we should also allow ourselves to recover from these periods where we're sprinting. If you think about any professional athlete, they're not always just playing the game. They're training, they're preparing, they're going to physical therapy to heal any injuries and wounds. They're giving themselves rest and recovery periods after they've been worn down by game season. And I think that's a necessity for whatever you're doing, just to give yourself recovery periods where you let yourself rest, whether that's mentally or physically, and you come back better and start moving forward again. So I think compared to my early mindset around career, which was mostly goal-oriented around different financial targets, around success metrics, I think my now goals are more around fulfillment. Making an income is obviously important because I do need to pay rent and other things like that, but I don't need exorbitant amounts of income to give myself fulfillment and joy in life. A couple of years ago, there was a survey. I'm sure a lot of you guys are familiar with it, but it was a survey around happiness and its correlation with income level. And it showed that your happiness increases until you hit a certain threshold of income, and then your happiness no longer increases. And I think that number was 70K, but it might be a little bit higher now, adjusted for inflation and things like that. But I think that's similar for me, that money and success no longer drive a lot of my career goals, partly because I've been able to spend the last 5+ years of my career working and saving and making sure that I can prepare myself for any emergencies, but also that I've found my happiness has been honestly at an all-time low compared to when I first started my career. And even though I've hit more milestones now and done more with my career, I'm like seeing myself fall into cycles of burnout and depression and unhappiness way more often than when I was a junior software engineer. And I think that goes back to what I was talking about with my coworker, which is values and priorities shifting as you get older. There's something really beautiful about doing things that have harmony or unison with your life. And by that, I mean spending 40 hours of your week doing something that aligns with your values and priorities in life. That is a very romanticized, idealized version of what a career could look like. But I think the best that we can try for is to strive for something that allows us to even tangentially tap into our passions or our interests rather than completely focusing on finances and making as much money as we can. Coming from an immigrant household, I used to believe that the highest income job was the most successful job and was the best career option. But there's something I said, I think last episode or a previous episode before that, which is that if you want to be jealous of someone with a career or with something in their life, you have to be jealous of all the struggles that come with it. And I think when we think about career, we don't really think about the challenges that come with careers. Some jobs require you to work 80 hours a week. Some jobs require you to be on your feet all day and exerting physical energy the whole day. And there's certain parts of those careers that once you experience, you start realizing how much you actually want to spend the next 40, 50 years of your life doing that specific thing. And the one thing that I've seen in this era of my life is this is the age, like 26 to 30. This is the age where so many of my friends are pivoting their careers. They're making transitions horizontally, vertically. They're completely taking leaps of faith to try something new. Some of my friends are working on startups. Some of my friends are at bakeries. There's so many changes that my friends and I are going through at this age because I think this is where all of our values are coming to light. I'm not sure what the saying is there, but I think this is the age where you're realizing that certain things that you cared about before don't matter as much, whether or not it's because you built up your savings account or you built up a backup plan or you just want change. Most people are not stagnant in their lives and they start forming these ideas of what their life could be. And yeah, it does come from a place of privilege to be able to switch careers, to change up your life, to move and have mobility in life. But I think that's something that we should all strive for, which is feeling like it's okay to change as a person and in your career. What I also noticed is that in your 20s, career seems to define everyone. Like career is what you lead with when you introduce yourself to someone. It's a topic of conversation. It's basically who you are, and something that I hope happens in your 30s, which I don't know if I've heard too many people talk about, is hopefully that more things start defining you, whether it's like hobbies or family or your values and other things like that. The shift that happens from when you're a student to when you're working full time is so interesting because the thing that creates your identity is so different. Going back to the idea of doing things that have unison or harmony in your life, another thing that I think creeps up on you as you enter your late 20s and early 30s is the feeling of not having time and also having more guilt around things. A lot of older people actually give the advice of live life without regret and without guilt. And to do that, you actually have to do things. And that's the hard realization that I've come to. I talk about being a creative person all the time and not seeing myself live up to that, and not even seeing myself in the last 5 years give myself a full force chance at being a creative person and exploring that path weighs on me way more than it used to, because in your early 20s, everyone tells you you're so young, you still have so much time. But in your late 20s, that time feels like a ticking time bomb. And this feeling of, oh shoot, I don't have any time left before I have kids, I think is a very flawed mindset. So I don't encourage you to think about timelines in such a rigid form. However, it does plague me that I've let time pass, and time passes so quickly. And for some reason, I've been there for other people in my life, my family, my coworkers, my job, but just not for myself. And so there's a lot of self-regret, like regret around things I've chosen for myself and things I've done with myself that I'm trying to switch and I'm trying to turn around. But I think as I approach 30, I have a lot more guilt and a lot more regret. The sadder thing about guilt and regret too, as you get older, is that you have less and less to blame for the things that you regret, because maybe in the past you would blame your parents for raising you a certain way, or you might blame your toxic relationships. But then the more time that you have with yourself to learn and grow, the only person that you can blame most of the time is yourself. So to live without regret means that you actually have to find solutions and change things that you feel regretful about. And again, I want to reiterate, it is never too late to do something about your life. I know I'm talking about all of this in the perspective of I'm in my late 20s, entering my 30s in a couple of years, but the same could apply for your 30s entering your 40s, or your 40s entering your 50s, or if you're 10 years old listening to this podcast, entering your teens. What is that saying? Like, the best time was yesterday, but it's still good today. Something like that. I'm really bad at remembering exactly the right phrasing for things, but I know the sentiments. I know exactly what they're trying to say. But it's never too late to turn your life around or reverse regrets that you have and fix that and focus on the things that you're guilty about. A lot of my guilt nowadays is also guilt for myself or guilt towards myself. If guilt were a stack of mail, I think what happens is I get new mail in the mailbox, I don't open it up, and I keep stacking it onto that pile. And so I just end up having more and more guilt for things that I choose to do with my life. The next thing that I briefly want to talk about is people's reaction to you as a person. Is as you're in your late 20s and entering your 30s, this is the harsh truth, but it is no longer cute to not have your shit together. And I hate to say this, but when you're really young and you're just getting started with adulthood, I feel like people are so much more forgiving with you. Whether it's not having direction in life or not dressing appropriate for certain events. Like, I think I used to wear the wrong types of, I still do not know to this day what exactly a cocktail dress is versus a black tie event dress. But I think people are less forgiving now with a lot of things. And in relationships too, it's not cute to be a bad partner to people, especially in your late 20s. When you're a teenager and everyone else is figuring out how to be a good boyfriend, a good girlfriend, a good partner, it's okay to kind of suck, you know? But nowadays, people just do not give you benefit of the doubt. And I think it gets worse and worse the older you get. The next thing that I want to talk about is friendship. And I wanted to talk about this because it's really easy to let friendships slip. Social life was a huge priority for me when I moved into the city. It was really easy to meet up with people. It was really easy to meet people. And it was really easy to just carve out time to see people. I made a very proactive effort to befriend as many people as I could back then, that in my late 30s, I want to just really weed out who my true friends are. After a certain point, I feel like friends just start dropping like flies, and it's a combination of people moving out of the same place that you're in, and also people being more busy and it just being like way harder to schedule things. And then also things like family and relationships, they really get into the way because across the board, everyone starts spending more time with their partner. They start spending more time on life things and, you know, building a family, building a home, and it's just harder to maintain friendships. The reality is that you just start weeding out who your true friends are and who the people that deserve your time are. And it's harder to just maintain friendships with everyone. I was mind blown the other day when one of my closest high school friends reached out to me and invited me to her wedding, because first of all, I was like, oh my God, you're getting married? Like, I know she and this guy have been dating for 9 years at this point, but I was just mind blown that it's been 3 years since I last talked to her. And she moved out of New York 3 years ago. And I can't believe that our last message was that long ago. But the quicker that time passes, the more you realize that you let certain friendships slip that you didn't even think about, or it didn't even cross your head. But being a good friend in your late 20s is way more of an active effort than it is in your early 20s. And I unfortunately have not been the best of friends to certain people that I really want to pick that relationship back up. But there's so many commitments and so many things all the time that get in the way. But make an active effort with your friends. I really stand by the fact that friendships are so important to maintain in your life, and you can't always just lean on yourself. And as you get older and as things change, you want someone to be able to talk to, and you want someone that understands you through all stages of your life. I have 10 minutes left on the recording, so I'm going to kind of speed through this, but I think the next thing is relationships, romantic relationships. My standards for my partner have gone up so much. And I know this because me and my boyfriend were at the 7-year mark. And in relationships, there's 2 critical points in a relationship, like defining moments in the relationship, which is the 2nd year and the 7th year, I think, are the years where problems surface and you really decide whether or not you want to continue or if you want to stop. So James and I are in our 7th year now. And I know a lot of you guys follow us and our dynamic, and we do have a great relationship. But because we're at the 7-year mark, I think we're talking about some really serious things. And we end up going down these super long paths and conversations about what we want for our future, how that looks, how we align. And yeah, we do have our little hiccups and little moments that we have to overcome. And not everything's perfect, but I will say one of the things that I've really, really grown into is having higher standards for myself in terms of what I want in a partner. Back in the day, I was totally okay with just someone that treated me well, was kind, and funny. Like, I don't know, blanket statement, just some really nice things and just a really good person. That's all I wanted. But right now in my life, I'm thinking about family, what it means to provide for a family, what it means to align on how you're raising a child, what it means to set yourself up for a good family life and a healthy marriage. And it is overwhelming. And I think we do have long conversations sometimes around what the future looks like for us. But I think my standards for what I want a partner and how my partner treats me is much higher, as I would expect for the other end too. I think James's standards for me are higher and my standards for him are higher, but that's also how we grow in our partnership and in our personal lives. So that is just one thing that I wanted to flag. I don't want to say too much about our relationship while he's not here. Him not being here, meaning that he's just like across the room working on his laptop with his headphones on. However, I think there's a lot to unpack about approaching the 30s with someone else. So all in all, there's so many creeping pressures that come as you approach 30. I'm still a couple of years away, but those things have already started to creep onto me, and I'm sure it'll get progressively more magnified as I get older. But that's not without its perks, because I feel like one of the things that I've had as I get older is clarity, just clarity on who I am, clarity on what I care about, clarity on certain life decisions and life choices that I didn't have at 23 or 24. And I'm happy about it. The other thing that I told someone last week is it's so amazing how much more I know about the world compared to when I was 21. And back then I felt like I knew everything. I did not know everything back then. I knew pretty much nothing about how the world worked, about how people worked. I feel like I know more about that. I definitely don't know everything, but that whole thing about older people being wise is very, very true. And I will never take an older person's wisdom for granted, because they truly just have lived through so much more than you have. And the experiences that you go through in life are what teaches you lessons, and not just forming those lessons on your own. Sometimes when I listen to my podcast, I I wonder how naive I am. And I wonder if in my 30s and 40s, I'll listen back to the podcast and be like, oh, she didn't know anything back then. So if you're someone older who's listening to this podcast, I hope it doesn't come off as silly. If anything, I just hope that this podcast brings comfort, if not small nuggets of wisdom that I learn along the way. But navigating your 20s is hard, and it's undeniable that we will go through periods of change and periods of transition and learning new things and having lull periods and having existential crises. And it's also very exciting and very rewarding as much as it is a challenge. So yeah, I think that's all I wanted to say today. If you're someone who's younger that's listening, I hope this episode didn't scare you too much. If you're someone who's older, please share any tidbits about your late 20s, your 30s that you went through that would be helpful to any of us. And thank you guys for listening. If you enjoy this podcast episode, please give us a like, a follow, or just a share, and turn on post notifications. And I will see you next week. Happy Soju Friday.